So Kansas City and Missouri lost their playoffs.
prayer and pledge of allegiance. Please feel free to join us.
Sure. If you'll bow with me. Our gracious Father, we thank you for the day that you've given us, Lord. We thank you for all the blessings that you've given us and blessing us to be servants of this city. We just ask, Lord, that you continue to bless us, bless our efforts, and bless the growth of our city. And Lord, let us be ever mindful of the blessings that you've given us, and we will forever give your name glory, honor, and praise. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, please call the roll.
Come on in here. Mr. Hawker?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Mel?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Isbell?
Here.
If y'all would stay with me here for just a second, I'd like for Officer Jonathan Boone, Officer Trey Hodges, and Officer Karen Jett to come up front for a second. We get a lot of phone calls in the city during the day in the city, and some of them are happy and a lot of them are not. But this past week, I got some calls that I felt like we need to let these folks know how great a job they do. Officer Jett here, I got a text message one day with a picture on it. It said, "This is one of your officers." I thought, oh, this is gonna be good. They sent me some more, and Officer Jett had stopped her patrol car downtown Conway and got out and was picking up trash that had fallen out of a car, trash. It was picking it up and putting it in her car. And this citizen noticed that. And when they called and let me know about it, I thought, that's going the extra mile. So Officer Jett, you projected a positive image of the city, and I appreciate that. Officer Boone and Officer Hodges, I get a phone call from someone, they go, "Well, I just got pulled over by two of your police." I said, "Okay, what were you doing?" "Well, first of all, I deserved it." All right? And the way that their voice was, I thought they were going to really rip into me. They said, "I just want to tell you that Officer Hodges and Officer Boone were two of the most professional, courteous police officers I've ever dealt with in the time that I've been stopped. And you know the way I drive that I get stopped a lot." I said, "Yes, my wife, I know." No. But anyway, I wanted to bring these officers up here as well and tell them, guys, y'all presented a real positive image of our city this week, or last week, and I want you to know that I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, you should have received copies of the January 9th City Council minutes. Any corrections or changes?
Make a motion for approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0. Mr. West will not be here tonight. Next, 6-0, I'm sorry. That's twice I've done that. Okay, next up, I have trouble counting sometimes. Next up, we will have Dr. Terry Fiddler, who's going to do a presentation for us. He's going to show us a video that lasts about 10 minutes, and then we'll take a minute or two for questions. Dr. Fiddler.
Before I start, the Arkansas Mission of Mercy is in its 13th year. This has been our 13th year at doing this. We brought relief to over 20,000 patients, almost 21,000, and $11 million worth of free dentistry. One of the reasons it works is because three of our gentlemen back here, Dr. Johnson, raise your hand, Dr. Simon, Dr. Gordy, these are all local folks, and they participate in this Mission of Mercy wherever we go. So I wanted y'all to know that these guys are part of this thing that are really makes the difference on whether this thing works or not. Dr. Johnson is a new oral surgeon here in town, and Gordy is just Gordy. He's a Gordy. And so, and then Simon is a Simon. This was obviously in Little Rock. You don't have to go out of the country to perform mission work. There's a lot of needy people in Arkansas, a lot of needy people in the state. Mr. Tom McNabb, you raise your hand here. He was Congressman French Hill's office, and you know Congressman Hill is very involved in the veterans. We're going to bring 2 busloads of homeless veterans to Little Rock and bring them here to.
It's pretty painful every day. Sometimes there's certain teeth that bother me other than others. And then there's sometimes, I mean, my mouth, we're just like, feels like it's on fire.
It's the back tooth on this side, and it's got a giant hole. Anything I eat and drink, I get food caught in it. And of course, different foods, different temperatures cause more pain.
Well, I want to get employment, so I want to have a tooth there so that I could get a good job.
I've been suffering for the past several months with face swelling up from back here with broken teeth, this side swelling up because of broken teeth. So yeah, and I have no dental and can't afford it.
Well, I'm here because I've got some dental problems that I need to get fixed. I've got some teeth that need to be pulled so I can get a new bottom plate put in.
It's not very often that you get the chance to get help. So no matter how long I have to sit up here, I'm willing to sit to get help.
This is how fast it's going to set up over the Expo Center. We start in December. This is my
with
older
the
brother
whole committee, which is made up of about 28 people, getting ready for May. So that's 6 months. It's an absolute labor of love. There's no question about it.
Carry on, carry on.
We'll see 1,300 to 1,400 patients a day here in Conway. 2 days.
That's out of here for you.
How good you're going to feel when we get done. We're going to make some molds of her teeth today, and then she's going to get a tooth taken out, and then we're going to have a partial ready for her in just a couple hours, and she'll be looking good.
These teeth are still kind of infected. That's why you're having such a hard time getting numb.
Something that's been impressive to me early on here, early this morning, is just how well the flow goes. It's managed well. You know, there's a lot of volunteers, the folks that manage the flow coming right in the front door. They do a really good job of that. So I've been really impressed with Arkansas from what I've seen so far.
We had to surgically remove a wisdom tooth. He did excellent. Took us a little bit, but we slipped it out of there for him, and he's going to feel much, much better.
We ended up taking out 8 teeth on Maria today. 3 of them ended up being surgical, so we put some stitches in her. But we took out the rest of her top teeth, so she can hopefully be getting on the road, being pain-free and getting fixed up.
When I was asked to come, I didn't really know what to expect. But from the minute I saw the line of people waiting to be served outside, I was blown away. And then I was even more in awe when I walked through the doors and saw the process.
Pedo was absolutely inundated with patients. And we had an extremely large Hispanic area this year. Children are very well behaved. Just did great.
The lay volunteers up front, the nurses,
About 900 kids.
the triage people have been excellent. And really all the patients have been good. The best hit this year has been the tooth fairy. Therapy dogs have been great too. It's calmed the kids down, and we tried to make this as fun as we can, and most of the kids have been very good.
Thank you. This is a much-needed service. It's just about as needed as our kids' beds that they have traveling around and doing. This is so needed because some people don't have the funds for it, and those that do can't budget for it the way they need to.
Andy, because his brother picked on him yesterday, he's getting ready to pull his tooth. He's seen 2 or 3. He says, "I can do it." Good job.
Okay.
interpreters that come with us, plus we use all the local interpreters associated
We
here
actually
in
have
Conway.
about 40 people this year that have committed to interpreting. So to the doctors, it means that they know
Eligible
that their
children's
instruction, their questions, anything that they need to communicate to the patient is being translated properly. And not only that, but what the patient is understanding and communicating back to the doctor is not lost in translation.
We will have 7 states that we'll have people from Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Tennessee, Texas, and Oklahoma, patients that will drive that far to come to Conway for treatment. We're going to need approximately 500 lay volunteers here in Conway. Suppose that we'll probably treat $1.8 million while we're here. 9 years and we're going to be
This 2-day operation is going to cost us about $250,000. It's all privately funded. If we didn't have the Walmart and the Delta Dental and other foundations of this state, we couldn't exist. It's just a great, great relationship all the way around.
Walmart and Sam's Club is proud to present a check for $96,500 to Arkansas Missions of Mercy. This comes from our Arkansas State Giving Program, which awards about $2 million in grants to Arkansas nonprofits every year.
The big thing that really impresses me in regards to Delta Dental's involvement is the manpower. There are a lot of Delta Dental employees here that have donated their time to be here to help this event work. From a director's perspective and from a dentist perspective or even a consumer's perspective, that is something that I'm very proud of in regards to the corporation and applaud them being involved at the level that they're involved in. I believe presently the foundation donates $100,000 a year to this particular event.
You cannot put as much time in this thing and as money that each individual dentist puts into the thing without knowing how much they care for this.
Oh, it's completely worth it. I mean, it's rewarding. I love it. It's a great setup, easy, user-friendly, lots of patients. It's unreal how many folks we're seeing.
I honestly feel like I get a lot more out of it than they do. Yes, they get out of pain, but I feel...
Practice out in West Conway.
I don't want to be selfish about it, but I feel so good helping people, which is why I got into dentistry in the first place.
I had one lady yesterday. She was from Hot Springs. She wanted the rest of her teeth out to get ready for dentures. She had 19 teeth. She was scared to death. Her husband sat down at the foot of her chair and held her ankle the whole time. We got the teeth out and she gave me a hug. You can't top that.
What's interesting is to see here in the United States still the depth of dental disease, much as we see on the foreign mission field too. So to do this work for our members of the Central Arkansas area is a very rewarding thing. You know, there are people. You get to take care of them. You know, it's a good thing.
The doctor just kept telling me he could be able to pull all the teeth that are giving me problems out. So my next thing is probably next month I can go down and get my partial and have a full set of teeth again. And I haven't had it in 15 years.
Going to be something to replace that tooth. Oh, okay. So it'll be similar to a retainer.
We're looking at your crowns. We're trying to match your crowns.
This lady called me.
We got our impressions made.
Get a job
of her teeth. And now this is going to go to our lab. She's going to go have her tooth taken out.
She always put her hand up in front of her face.
And she's had her extraction.
She called me back. Called me and said, Dr. Fiddler, I got the job.
So there's her partial right there.
I was hiding my face and I was hiding my mouth a little bit, and I don't feel like hiding, so it changed my life.
That's just it. We not only change people's faces, we change their lives.
found out that I'm getting a
today.
replacement of all of my teeth, even the previous teeth that I've had removed over the past 10 years.
This gentleman's going to go over to surgery as soon as we get done. In the meantime, we're going to send these impressions to our lab over here, and they're going to go ahead and make the partial. We're going to start on the posterior left and the back, take out a piece of a wisdom tooth. We're going to work our way forward.
And so now we've got a partial that was made.
It's amazing.
There you go. How about that?
Yes. I'm going to cry. Thank you so much.
I thank all the people that are here within this program, the people that volunteer their hours, their time away from their families to do this for us, to give back. I just thank you, and God bless each and every one of you.
We are the single most beneficial organization to relieve pain and suffering in the state of Arkansas. No question in my mind. We don't ask anybody for a driver's license, no ID, not are you legal. We just simply get in line and treat the people. It's just, it's a labor of love. And somewhere in here is the way to turn this up. There we go. But anyway, obviously y'all have lots of business to do tonight, but I certainly can come back and address any questions. But it is a thing that I invite y'all to come out, go online and register as a lay volunteer. It requires a lot of people to set up the equipment, a lot of them to break it down because of Senator Rayford. Senator Rayford, raise your hand, and I'm looking for David Meeks. Where's Dr. Steve McGee back there? I've contacted all them, your local elected officials, state level, and they're all in 100% to help us on this thing. And anyway, we've got Renewal Ranch coming, and they're going to help us set up, they're going to help us break down, and we're going to be able to give them a nice donation for doing so. And so we're going to use the local people for our big equipment. We're going to use the local people. Every place that we go, we always try to use local people. And the McDonald's Foundation is going to be involved with it. We feed these folks the whole time they're there. And we also have, I'm trying to get it all in.
That's all right.
As fast as I can. But I will tell you, if they're needing heart medication, our physicians on site give them free heart medications. If they need diabetic medications, our physicians on site give them free diabetic medication. I always tell them, when we came to Little Rock and in Jonesboro, the guys saw the stuff in Jonesboro, we're going to bring $250,000 of financial impact to y'all. We've got 5 hotels that are booked, and it's just a great thing. Without y'all, without the chamber, who is going to work with us a lot, without these gentlemen that I just mentioned, and certainly not without our dentist that's going to be doing the thing we're going to take, and without Congressman Hill's help, these things can't happen. I'm available for any questions. I know you'll need to move on, and I appreciate the time. This is a thing I want to bring to Conway as often as I can, because obviously I'm not a spring chicken anymore, so I can't do this much longer. So other people are going to have to do it. But I will tell you, anybody that you know can help us financially, we will do it. Anybody that you can help us with services, we would like to have them, okay, and contact me. I've given out several of these brochures. Y'all didn't get any, but
Terry, what's the date? What date are you doing?
It's April the 26th, 7th, and 8th. That's the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We set up on a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as we'll do it. I'm the first one on site. I will greet everybody about 3:30 in the morning, and I will tell you, last year at 3:30 in the morning, I counted 1,050 people in line at 3:30 in the morning. Dr. Bates, Joe Bates, who is the head physician for the health department, he said, these are the sickest bunch of people he has ever been around in his life. And he's been around a lot, you know, so that tells you. So we're just here to help these people. That's all we're here for. Any other questions?
They come from all over the state, Terry.
Yeah, we'll have them from every county, plus, like I said, 7 states. I will promise you, when we do all the demographics and people sign up where they're coming from, the black lady that was on the thing, she's from Dallas, Texas. She drove to Jonesboro, okay, and then came back to Little Rock. And so, and like I said, she called me from Dallas, Texas, and I'd given her my cell number, and she said, Dr. Fiddler, I got my job. And I'm telling you what, I'm sorry.
How's the word getting out about it?
We have, Delta Dental has committed $15,000 to advertising. We've got several billboards along the interstate that we put out. We're gonna have a banner, the chamber is gonna help us with the banners in the city. I will tell you, the Hispanic demographic, it'll get out. It'll get out. I go to a ton of churches, and visit with them. We never have a problem of it getting out. Of course, we have, that Runyon's gonna help us at the country station. We will have, Channel 4 was supposed to be here tonight. I don't know what happened to them. But anyway, we will have, all the television stations. I will go and interview with them. I will interview with iHeartRadio in Little Rock. It gets out all over the place. That's how it gets to these other states. And we have 2 buses coming from Lake Village. I already got 2 buses of people coming from Lake Village that the churches are providing buses, and they're getting in line and coming. All I tell people, I don't care if you're a billionaire or a pauper, you get in line, wait your turn, and we will treat you, and all I require of them to have is bad teeth. And so they provide all that we want. And so, so if y'all have folks, and that's the reason I gave you up there, if y'all have folks that you need a group to contact, please let them know. And my cell number is available. This is what, you know, I fully believe that every person in this world was put on the earth to help another person. I fully believe in service. That's what a Christian is. I fully believe in service, and that's what every one of us need to do. And if we can help other people who are falling on hard times, what we haven't had, because we're all in pretty good shape in here. And so, anyway, I know y'all will.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick.
Thank you, Terry. You leaving?
Next up, we have our monthly financials for that ended on December 31st, 2017. Mr. Winningham.
He said you went to the dark side.
Well, we ended the year pretty good. Some of these numbers will still, they'll be adjusted before everything's finalized. Sales tax revenue ended up, showing here up 4% over what we budgeted. There are 12 months of revenue shown there, but 2 months are just estimates because we don't yet know what November and December sales are. So if the upward trend continues for those 2 months, then we should be, somewhere north of 4%. Being up in sales tax for the year. And you can see that 4% amounts to $750,000. That figure right next to it to the left. So anything over 4% is going to get us closer to that $1 million mark that we were hoping for. Expenditure-wise, we're down 4% as a general fund as a whole. 96% of the budget spent. All of our departments. Had a good year being frugal with their budgets and not spending their money unless it was something they really needed. So everybody's to be commended there.
Tyler, before you move on back to the revenue for just a minute,
sure.
Franchise fees and municipal court fees and fines were down substantially. What can you give me any idea and give us any idea about what that was all about?
Franchise fees almost hit, at 95%. It was slightly less than what we budgeted for. That's all dependent on the weather. A hot summer, everybody's running air conditioners, so our electric franchise fees will be up. This summer was warm, but it wasn't just crazy hot, so that's going to be part of it. The new water and wastewater franchise that we put in I lose track, last year, maybe the year before, it's continually done, it's continually grown. You know, water use and of course wastewater along with that continues to be, you know, fairly strong for us. Court fines and fees, I will tell you, there's 1 month of revenue missing there.
Okay.
We've only got 11 months in the books now, and getting caught up for stuff that come in. You know, those receipts will come in January. We haven't yet got that booked yet.
When I see $250,000, it's not where it ought to be. It kind of makes me raise an eyebrow.
Right, yep. So we got 1 month missing there, so they'll be revenue-wise, the change should be for the good.
Thank you.
Between now and when we see final actual numbers. So bottom line, right now we're showing almost a $600,000 net revenue, which will be, they'll go into the fund balance of the general fund, go into the bank, so that's a good thing. Anybody have any other questions or comments on general fund? I don't think I made any notes on anything else. I will jump ahead in the airport fund. You can see there, and we've got a revenue line there, proceeds from the sale of assets, $3 million. That's related to the sale, closing of the sale on the old airport. The balance sheet still shows that loan due, $2,750,000. That'll be cleaned up when everything's said and done. The $6.1 million sales price covered that loan plus reimbursing back sanitation, that $3 million. So that's not yet reflected on the sanitation side, and it will be once the final numbers are done as well. So usually every year, you know, about March or April, I try to get you guys another year-end statement to show how everything shook out after we get accruals done and all that stuff. So those numbers will all be reflected when you see that.
Thank you.
That's all I've got, Mayor.
Any questions for Mr. Winningham?
I make a motion to approve the monthly financials.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the monthly financials for December 31st, 2017. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Winningham. Next, we have a report of our standing committees. Mr. Hawkins, Community Development, this is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on this portion of the agenda is an ordinance amending Ordinance 012-8 to allow for an additional enforcement remedy of discontinuation of water services for customers. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's Ordinance 018-07.
Make the motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
Yeah.
There was one slight amendment on that only. Sorry.
What do we need to do now?
Only his to there. That would be it.
Okay, you gotta explain.
How much it requires. I don't know if we're going to talk about it.
Okay, all right. We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
Do we need any explanation on this at all?
What?
Do we?
A brief one, maybe.
Yeah, just a real brief explanation, if you don't mind.
Mr. Brett Carroll.
Yeah, I'm Brett Carroll, live at 14 Summerfield Drive, and I work for Conway Corp. And so you guys may have noticed that our board of directors last Tuesday passed a resolution recommending adoption of this additional enforcement mechanism, specifically related to grease traps. What this will allow us to do after we have went through all of the necessary steps, after we've communicated with them, after we've gotten with code enforcement. And by the way, we have worked with Mr. Clausen and his staff to make sure this ordinance is the way that they'd like for it to be. But after we went through all those processes, that there are just unfortunately a couple of customers that the only way you can get them to take care of that situation is to discontinue your water service. And once you do that, it will incent them to pump out the grease like every other group does. Mr. Hawkins, what happens is if they don't pump that grease trap out, the grease ends up in the sanitary sewer system, which causes backups, which usually affects another customer. If it makes it to our lift station, we incur additional O&M expense. It's a public health and safety issue, and we're not going to go out there under the cover of night and turn their water off. What we're going to do is communicate with them. In fact, what we'll do, should you adopt this amendment, is we'll communicate with them one more time. We'll send them a certified letter and say, we really mean it. We're going to, if you don't do what you're required to do by law, we're going to turn your water off. And so we think that'll have a positive impact. And, help protect our ratepayers, keep rates low, and protect the sanitary sewer system.
Thank you very much. That's excellent.
And
Yeah,
just kind of
thank
follow
you.
up on that too, just the process of issuing citations and stuff takes a little bit longer, and, the damage to the infrastructure was still occurring, so we wanted to stop that. We were gonna do one small amendment to, in that change, is when the CEO or their designee, and that would be the only change that we would make.
Okay.
Any further questions, Mr. Carroll? Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance.
Thank you, Brett.
No further discussion. Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye. 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Thank you. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to remove fixed asset inventory for the Conway Airport. We've got a list of items. Mr. Zilks, would you like to tell us about this?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Pretty simple. Mr. Winningham just mentioned
Open the back door and let the train out.
Yeah. I just don't miss that being out at the airport. As
You should
Mr.
come to
Winningham,
town more often.
I know. As Mr. Winningham mentioned on our financial statement, had the proceed from sale of assets. What you're seeing here is since that property's been sold, we're just going to take that off the fixed asset books. If you look down the date columns, you'll see some of those go all the way back as 1940. So now that all of that property is gone, we're just going to take it off the books.
I make a motion, we remove these fixed assets.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this request. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zill. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 1340 and 1370 McNutt Road. It presently is MF2. The requested zoning is an I1 zoning. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on the 16th of this month, 2018, and the commission voted 7-0 to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 01808.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye. Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to rezone property at 604 and 606 East Robin Street. It presently is zoned C3. The requested zoning is a PUD. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on the 16th of this month in 2018, and at that time, the commission voted unanimously to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance for this item, and it's ordinance number 01809.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Would anyone like to speak for or against this?
Philip Fletcher, 2652 Bruce Street, I'm Executive Director for the City of Hope Outreach. And we're seeking this PUD to build 10 tiny homes to address homelessness here in our city. And these 10 tiny homes will be a rental approach. 60% will go to those that are homeless. 20% will go to homeless veterans, and then the other 20% will go to low-income and middle-income persons. And so we need this PUD. We'll be joining our 2 pieces of property and then proceed for fundraising to build these homes with hopes in the next 2 years to have these built and occupied. And so I appreciate the passage. Any question.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Grimes?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes. Passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Hawkins?
And the final item here, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve a conditional use permit request for Finish Line Motors to allow automobile sales in commercial mixed-use zoning districts in the Markham Street Neighborhood-Specific Plan for property at 1267 and 1269 Harkrider Street. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on November 20th of 2017, and the Planning Commission voted 0-8 against the motion that this request go to City Council. The motion was defeated. The applicant notified the Planning Department of their intent to send this to City Council, and that's why it is on our plate this evening. So it has been denied at the Planning Commission level to start with. Would anybody like to talk? Yeah.
I wasn't in on that meeting.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Hey,
Would you state your name and your address, please?
Sylvester Ingram,
Thank you, sir.
1269 Harkrider and 1267.
Thank you.
I just purchased that property, and what I was trying to do was get 1267 knocked down and paved, and then run the business out of 1269. That business, it was a bondsman office for the last 15 years. He inquired on selling cars. You know, he probably would sell 12 to 13 cars a year because, you know, he would take titles and they wouldn't come back and you know, pay their bills, so they would sell cars. What I was just trying to do was see what I can do to just be able to sell cars only. Probably have like 10 cars up there at a time. No more, no less. So I was just trying to see what could I do to bring that business up to code if we need to do that, or what is my options to get that rezoned, considering that it's a car lot next to me and it's also a ATF shop on the other side of me.
Mr. Patrick, would you like to address that? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Get up here and get the microphone so everybody else can hear TV land. Well, the property right now, like he says, has been used as a bail bondsman office for many years, and I think that's been vacant for several years. I wasn't aware that the bail bondsman may have been selling some cars there, but I don't think that really matters as far as the land use goes, because the grandfathered use would have passed by now. But this area is part of the Markham Street neighborhood specific plan. And the vision for that plan is a more urban downtown extension of the downtown area with structure set on the street. Basically, it says parking lots are not to be on corner lots. This is a corner lot. The parking lots are supposed to be behind buildings and hidden, which is the opposite of what you probably want with a car sales business. So, you know, the intent of the Markham Street plan would be for this property to be redeveloped with some form of commercial structure, possibly two-story, at least two-story in height, set closer to the street, wider pedestrian-friendly sidewalk, all that on the front. Any type of parking that would be in support of the structure would be at least to the side, if not behind, that kind of thing. That's the vision laid out as part of the Markham Street neighborhood-specific plan. I believe the applicant had talked about just wanting to spread gravel there and put up a fence to keep their cars safe and all that kind of thing. So that really doesn't fit into the scheme of the redevelopment for the area. The car lot that's to the north is grandfathered, same, the the all-terrain vehicle business to the south, the motorcycle shop, that kind of thing. That was built several years ago too. Well, the property used to be just zoned flat out C3, which is our most intensive commercial zone, and there was not the form-based code, which requires the buildings and structures and all that urban fabric stuff that I'm speaking of. That was not required at the time, so those structures were built prior to the plan, and it was a C3 zone, and now it's got the commercial mixed-use zone, which allows commercial activity it allows car sales through the conditional use permit, but it also has all the other criteria that go with what the structures are going to look like and all that kind of thing. So to use the structure that's there now and whatever layout it's in now, that's grandfathered as far as a commercial use goes. But to add to that with parking and all that other would need to come in compliance with the Markham Street plan, and that's going to be pretty difficult because they're really conflicting with each other.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patrick.
So you would be proposing then to take a building down? Is that what I understood you to say?
Yes, sir. 1267, it really would do the neighborhood greatly deal if I was willing to take that down, because it's kind of a sore thumb. In the other building, the other house, I can update it to make it look a lot nicer, whatever I need to do. But I am willing to knock 1267 down.
Were you aware that there was a plan in place for Markham Street when you bought the property?
Well, I wasn't, ma'am. No, ma'am. So, like, you know, like, the way the law works, if you sell less than 5 cars at your home, you're entitled to sell just 5 cars. I just wanted to do the right way, like probably like 5 cars or less sellable. But like, if I'm in the house, you know, I own 2 vehicles. So that's why I said I wouldn't have no more than 10 altogether. But the plan, when I seen the plan, you know, no flooding, no traffic issues or any of that, just really wanted to just kind of, you know, sell cars, and that was basically it.
And I'm not aware of the law he's referring to. I don't think that's accurate.
Of the what, I'm sorry?
Selling less than 5 cars at your home.
I thought you could sell 4 in a year at your home.
It's 5, yes,
No,
correct.
not under our current zoning and ordinances, you cannot.
Not even at home?
No. There's some houses in Conway that have been doing it, but they were grandfathered in, mainly because of annexation and things like that. We've dealt with some of those. I'm sure you've seen them. One of the ones I think about is the gentleman on Salem. He's been doing that for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've required certain information from others to actually prove that they were doing that prior to them being brought in the city or the zoning change in that particular area. So I could be proven wrong, but from what I'm aware and what little we've looked into, that's not true.
Okay.
So you're not allowed to be able to sell a car at all on your property?
Not without the appropriate approval, no.
Like what appropriate approval?
Like if you get conditional use or you're in the specific zone for that.
I didn't know that.
Mr. Patrick, what
I
could
can't put an ad, I'm sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
can't put an ad in the paper and tell them to come to my house and buy my car?
Well, you potentially could do that, but you can't have it like sitting out in your yard with a for sale sign and
Like
that
there's
kind
one
of
on
stuff.
Prince Street now that has had an influx of cars.
Yeah.
One at a time, but car sits there and sells and another one comes.
Yeah, and I think code enforcement has addressed them several times.
Yeah, we've gone out and had to deal with them, so.
Mr. Patrick, in this current configuration, what would the applicant be able to do with this property?
Well, I mean, zone commercial mixed use, the structure is there. Likely some upgrades to the structure as far as possibly wiring, building code. That would need to take place because, like I say, the office that had been used before, I think it's been several years since it's been used as an office, so whatever grandfathered building code, the shape that it was in before that time is lapsed. So any type of new business opening up there would need to at least comply with building code, for one thing, number one. It could be used as is, as long as the building is life safety code, or the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, all that is met, then it could be used as far as an office or a commercial business of some kind, because it is in a commercial mixed-use zone. So in its current form, it could be used. There's no parking, out there. It's just a yard, basically. It's a house or a couple of houses with yards and driveways. So there's no parking area to park cars on or anything like that right now. If someone wanted to open up like a small gift shop or something like that, or an office or something that didn't generate a lot of cars where they were parking all over the yard and that kind of thing, because in a commercial zone, you need to have a parking lot. You can't just have gravel and park cars on it, or park in the yard and all that. And So it could be used as long as it meets the building code. But it would need to be in some lesser capacity, I would say, in a commercial use or office use. But car sales is going to be difficult because you're going to have to build a parking lot, basically, and the way it's laid out is going to be tough to make all that work, I think.
And that's not what our vision was for.
And that's
for
not the
this
vision of the
area,
Markham
you know.
Street plan, no,
Mhm.
but.
Could I make a suggestion, young man? Would you mind if I did that? If this goes to a vote tonight and it's voted down, you will have to wait a year before you can bring this piece of property back up to talk about it again.
Okay.
It would be my suggestion to you to maybe go back to the drawing board and see what else you might could do with this and not get locked in.
Yes,
I
sir.
think it would be in your best interest right now to probably do that.
Okay.
And Mr. Patrick can help you with that.
Right.
I think y'all can get together and he can talk about what you might need to, if you tell him what you think you might want to do, he can tell you what would be required to do that, and y'all can work together. I think that would be a good suggestion, just to withdraw this.
Well, with the parking lot, like you were saying, I'm willing to do whatever
Yeah.
I need to do.
I
As
think
far
y'all
as
should
the
probably
parking
hash
lot.
that out a little more.
And then come back.
So you'll know exactly what would be required.
Okay.
And so you could, let's withdraw this. I mean, if you're okay with that.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'd be willing to help out however I need to.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Y'all get
Yeah.
together and y'all see what we can work out.
Okay,
If you could do, that'd be in your best interest, I think. We're trying to help you out.
okay.
Do you
Okay,
want to
thank you.
withdraw it
Yeah,
off
thank
the
you.
Okay,
agenda?
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think he made the request. I think it's enough.
Yeah.
Would you like to withdraw this request at this time? Yes, sir. Okay. This applicant has withdrawn this request, so item A5 is off the table.
All right, Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next up, we have an ordinance appropriating grant funds received from the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management to the City of Conway Police Department SWAT Team. Chief Spradlin.
Good evening. This is our Homeland Security grant for our SWAT team. It's managed through Arkansas Department of Emergency Management. The money for this particular year's grant has already been received in a previous council meeting. We're requesting that $18,923.77, which is the remainder of that grant, be carried over to this year so we can spend that and close that grant year out.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
Ordinance 10.
Number 10.
Thank you.
Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next, we have an ordinance to waive bids and purchase tasers from Taser International for the Conway Police Department. Chief Spradlin.
Yeah, this is an annual sole source ordinance that we do every year. We're requesting that we use Taser International for the purchase of our tasers. They're the only manufacturer of controlled electronic weapons.
Right.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Next, we have ordinance to waive bids and purchase concealment vest from Tico Safety for the Conway PD. Chief Spradlin.
Another sole source ordinance that we do every year. We've done business with Tico Safety for several years. We'd like to stick with the Point Blank brand vest. We'll be purchasing 23 of those this year.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, and it should be our ordinance number 12.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
6-0. Thank you, Chief Spradlin.
Chief,
Nick? Yes, ma'am.
can I just say one quick, Chief Spradlin, I wanted to say thank you for the help that you've given, and you too, Mayor Castleberry, on Clifton Street. It's been some interesting comments about it.
I'm sure.
But I think the neighborhood does appreciate it.
Good, thank you.
Hey, Chief, that was, I was proud of your officers this week. That's 3 of them in 1 week. That's good. That's
That's the
good.
kind of calls we like to get.
It is, it is.
Well, I can tell you, getting to work with those, you know, the men and women in uniform, it's pretty frequent. They don't get bragged on, but they always do a good job.
They do. They do. We have excellent police and fire and sanitation. We've just got good employees in Conway.
And especially when you're not expecting the story to go the way that it went.
As soon as I caught the voice, I thought, oh. Next, we have consideration to extend the lease agreement with the University of Central Arkansas for property located at 1835 South Donaghy. Chief Winter will speak to this. This is an extension of the contract we have with UCA for the Station 6 fire station property. The amount stayed the same, and it is budgeted in the 2018 budget. Chief, did I say everything?
I don't think there's anything left to be said.
I make a motion for adoption.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve this agreement. Any further discussion?
I will abstain just because it involves UCA.
Okay. Ms. Mel will abstain. Mr. Garrett?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
That's 5-0 with one abstention. All right. Next, we have an ordinance accepting and appropriating insurance proceeds for the Conway Fire Department. Chief Winter.
Yes, we received insurance check in the amount of $7,550 to replace one of our thermal imaging cameras, which was ruined last year, and we're just asking for acceptance of that.
Make a motion that we waive the readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, and I believe it should be 13.
Second.
Correct?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. And our last item tonight is an ordinance of authorizing a staffing change and appropriating funds for a new assistant chief's position within the Conway Fire Department. Chief?
Yes, I am requesting a new position within the department, an assistant chief's position to head a new division within the department. We currently have 3 divisions, training, operations, and fire marshal's division. With the approval in the 2018 budget to start a paramedic program, I'm asking for this position to lay the foundation and establish the medic program within the Conway Fire Department.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 6-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
1814. Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Chief Winter, it's a good road you're heading down. It's going to save people's lives.
I think so. Thank you.
That's all we have on the agenda tonight. I'll take a motion to
Give me
adjourn.
all this
So
stuff.
moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Hey, Dave.
Can you just tell me the date? Just
Hey, David.
Highlighted. What is wrong?
county
Hey,
Kelly, 20 days prior to preference, so it's 20 days before that.
Yeah,
Comes out second if you ask me, but I'm not telling you anything.